You know, it's amazing when you think about how a single idea can just take off and become like a massive success. Like they say Charles Schwab had this one insight that turned into like a $600 million fortune.
Wow.
It really makes you wonder what those ideas are, like those pivotal thoughts.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the territory we're exploring today, right? You share with us Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
A real classic in the whole study of achievement. But we're not just going to like summarize it. We're going to really dig in and try to extract those principles, those timeless principles that you can use.
Exactly. And it's not just like a motivational, rah-rah kind of thing.
Right.
This is like the author spent 2 decades, like prompted by the Andrew Carnegie himself, interviewing over 500 people who had achieved extraordinary things, names like Henry Ford, Theodore Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Even the original Mr. Wrigley. And so the whole idea was to see if there was some kind of magic formula that applied to all these different paths to success.
Yeah, to make it accessible.
Yeah.
Right, to make it something that didn't require years and years of like personal investigation.
Right.
So that anyone could benefit from this knowledge.
And so for our listeners out there, I mean, our goal is to really like dissect some of the most potent ideas in this book.
Absolutely.
Pull out the actionable nuggets.
Yes.
The aha moments that can fuel, your own rich life, whatever that means for you.
Yeah, I love it.
All right, so let's dive right in.
Okay.
The book talks about the power of definite desire, and that sounds kind of straightforward.
Right.
But they really emphasize this distinction between like a casual wish and this like intense, unwavering, almost obsessive kind of desire.
Yeah, burning desire.
Yeah.
Not just like, oh, that would be nice to have, but I absolutely need to have this.
Yeah, and they illustrate this so well with this story of Edwin C. Barnes, who had this like white-hot desire to not just work with Thomas Edison, but to work with him.
Yeah, to partner with him.
Yeah, as a partner.
Yeah.
Not foreman with him. And, when you look at the obstacles he had in front of him, it really highlights how intense that desire was.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, he didn't know Edison personally. He was short on funds.
Right.
Like most of us would see those as like roadblocks, like dead ends.
Right.
But
not him.
His desire was something else.
Yeah. He was so determined that he actually hopped on a freight train, like without a ticket, just to get to Edison's lab in New Jersey.
Wow.
And it's amazing because years later, when he finally did connect with Edison, Edison actually remembered that first meeting very vividly.
Really?
He said that even though, Barnes looked like he had fallen on hard times, there was this look in his eyes, this unmistakable sign of just absolute determination. And Edison recognized that, like, when someone have that level of desire, they're usually the ones who find a way to succeed.
So it's not just saying, oh, I want that. It's that refusal to be deterred.
Yeah.
It's that kind of single-minded focus coupled with, a plan.
Absolutely.
So for you listening out there, I mean, when you think about your goals, is it kind of a casual interest or is it something that really consumes you in this way?
Yeah, that's the question. And that leads us directly to this idea of persistence, right?
Okay.
Which is so powerfully illustrated by this story of Darby and the Goldmine.
Oh, man, that story is like...
It's a classic.
Yeah, the guy who was so close.
So close.
Striking it rich,
Yeah, he dug and dug. And he found this promising vein of ore, but then it seemed to just like disappear.
Yeah, and he got discouraged.
He did. He gave up.
Yeah, he sold all his equipment for like practically nothing.
Pennies.
And then the guy who bought it found a massive gold deposit like 3 feet from where he stopped.
Just 3 feet from where Darby had stopped digging. It's unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
But what's even more impactful than just the missed opportunity is the regret that Darby felt.
Oh, yeah.
Not just for the lost gold, but for the lesson that he had to learn the hard way about giving up too soon.
But the thing is, he actually used that regret later.
He did.
When he went into insurance sales.
Yeah. He said that his success in sales was directly attributed to that experience in the gold mine.
It gave him that stick-to-a-bitiveness.
Yes, he just refused to take no for an answer.
So it's like that success was often just hidden.
Yeah.
Right beyond that point where we feel like giving up.
Absolutely. Like just on the other side of that apparent failure.
Yeah. And it's interesting, the book mentions that over 500 successful people recounted similar experiences.
Yeah.
Like their biggest wins came right after these huge setbacks that would have caused most people to quit.
It's so easy to be deceived by failure, isn't it?
Totally. It makes you think about like your own experiences.
Yeah.
Like how many times have you been so close to a breakthrough and just
give it up? Yeah. And speaking of breakthroughs and persistence, the book tells this other great story about a young black girl who really exemplifies this raw power of desire.
Oh, yeah.
Remember the story about the little girl who confronted Darby's uncle for 50 cents?
Yeah.
I mean, this girl was tiny, and Darby's uncle was not someone you wanted to mess with.
Right. He was a big guy.
But this little girl, she wasn't scared at all.
No.
Instead of backing down, she stepped right up to him and said, "My mammy's got to have that 50 cents.
And it's amazing because the uncle was so taken aback.
He was.
By her, complete confidence and determination. He just handed over the money.
He did.
And Darby was, stunned. He was watching this, and he realized the power of that child's desire.
Yeah, it wasn't about physical strength or anything like that. It was pure will.
Yeah.
Like the intensity of your want.
And it made him reflect on his own lack of that.
Absolutely.
When he was in that gold mine.
It's a powerful lesson, isn't it? For our listeners to think about what obstacles in their own lives could they overcome with that same level of unshakable desire?
It's a great question. And, it really connects with this idea of being success conscious.
Yes.
Almost willing success into being.
Through sheer willpower.
Yeah, by being so determined. And the book even suggests this kind of dramatic step of literally clipping the word impossible out of your dictionary.
I love that image.
Right. It's like a powerful visual.
That is.
To remind yourself.
Get rid of those self-limiting beliefs.
But while desire is this incredible engine for achievement.
Yes.
The book argues that it needs a really strong foundation.
Okay.
And that foundation is faith.
Right.
And now when they talk about faith, they're not necessarily talking about religious faith.
Right.
It's more about a deep, unshakable belief in your own ability to achieve those desires.
Right. Your own potential.
Yeah. And they suggest this method of cultivating faith called autosuggestion, which is basically persistently holding your desire in your mind.
Repeating it to yourself.
Yeah. And the author even shares this really personal story about his son who was born without ears.
Yeah.
And despite what a lot of people might think,
right,
he instilled in his son this unwavering desire to be able to hear normally.
To have normal hearing.
Yeah, and he even framed this perceived handicap as a potential advantage.
Right.
Which is really interesting.
And it's amazing because the son actually internalized that belief.
Yeah.
And went on to have a successful career related to hearing aids.
So it really shows the power of, instilling belief.
Yes, and consistent effort.
Yeah, right, from a young age. And it's amazing what we can achieve when we truly believe in something.
Absolutely. And the book goes even further and actually provides very specific, actionable steps for turning desire into results.
Okay.
There are 6 concrete steps in chapter 2 for achieving a monetary equivalent of your desire.
Okay.
And then there are 4 key instructions for your mastermind group. In the section on organized planning, and both of these frameworks really rely on the principle of autosuggestion.
So it's not enough to just passively hope.
Right.
You have to actively program your subconscious mind with your goals.
Yeah. Say it out loud.
Yeah.
Repeat it. Believe it.
And not just recite the words, but really feel the emotion behind them.
Exactly. Words are just empty vessels, unless you put real feeling behind them.
Right.
Your subconscious needs that emotional charge to really take hold of those desires and act upon them.
And he even gives you his personal formula.
He does?
For building self-confidence through autosuggestion.
Yeah.
5 key points that include having a definite chief aim.
Yes.
Operating with truth and justice.
Right.
Eliminating negative emotions and maintaining a strong belief in yourself and others.
Yeah, it's like a recipe for building that inner certainty.
It's like creating your own personal affirmation.
Absolutely.
Designed to build that unshakable inner conviction.
And speaking of unshakable conviction, the book points to someone like Mahatma Gandhi as an example.
Yeah.
Of an individual who achieved incredible influence through the sheer power of his faith.
Really amazing.
He mobilized millions of people without any military might.
Wow.
Just through the force of his belief.
That's incredible.
And all this talk about desire and faith is essential.
Yeah.
But the book then pivots to this crucial idea of specialized knowledge and organized planning.
Okay, and this is where they kind of challenge that conventional wisdom that knowledge is power.
They do.
They argue that knowledge by itself
right.
is not power, it's only potential power.
Yeah. It's like raw material just waiting to be shaped and used.
And they say it only becomes real power when it's organized into practical action plans that are directed towards your goals.
Exactly. You got to have a plan.
And they even point out what they see as a missing link in education.
Oh, interesting.
That while we learn a lot of information, we're not really taught how to organize it and use it in the real world.
Yeah, that's so true. Think about all the stuff you've learned over the years.
Yeah.
Are you actively using it? Or is it just sitting there?
Yeah, and they use some great examples to illustrate this point. Like Thomas Edison, who only had a few months of formal schooling.
Right.
Or Henry Ford, who didn't even finish 6th grade.
Wow.
And they both achieved massive success through practical knowledge.
Through experience and focused learning.
And they emphasize this crucial step of deciding what specific knowledge you need and for what purpose.
Absolutely.
And that this knowledge should be directly tied to your major life goals.
Right.
And they say in today's rapidly changing world, this need for continuous learning and specialization is even more important.
Absolutely. We got to keep growing.
Like Robert P. Moore from Columbia University talks about this.
Interesting.
And it's fascinating how they talk about the psychology of value.
Okay.
And suggest that sometimes free education is undervalued because we don't have to pay for it.
That makes sense.
And how employers often view people who take home study courses more favorably because it shows ambition and self-discipline.
It's a signal.
Yeah. So that's something for you to think about in terms of your own development.
Yeah.
And then they tell this great story about an unemployed salesman.
Oh, yeah.
Who basically used his bookkeeping knowledge and a simple idea to create a really successful business.
By marketing his personal services.
Yeah, and they talk about this silent salesman scrapbook that he created, which is a perfect example of organization and presentation.
A tangible representation of his skills.
And that leads us perfectly to this next principle. The power of imagination, which the book calls the workshop of the mind.
I love that.
Right. It's where those plans start to take shape.
Right. That's where you create the blueprints for turning your desires into reality.
Yeah. And they make this distinction between synthetic imagination, which is basically taking existing ideas and combining them in new ways.
Right.
And creative imagination.
Which is more like tapping into a direct channel to what they call infinite intelligence.
Ooh.
The source of those sudden insights and inspirations.
So synthetic imagination is like being a builder. Using existing materials.
Right.
And creative imagination is like discovering a whole new source of materials or like a brand new architectural design.
Like a whole new way of building.
And they really emphasize the importance of writing down your desires and plans.
Putting it on paper.
Yeah, to give form to those intangible thoughts.
It makes it real.
So how often do you do that, our listeners?
Yeah.
Like how often do you take those ideas out of your head
and get them out there
and put them down?
Yeah.
Because it's that act of writing it down that begins to transform it.
It's the first step.
And they suggest this really interesting connection between desire as a thought impulse and the fundamental energy of the universe.
Wow.
That's a pretty big concept to consider.
It is.
And then they tell this story about this old doctor.
Oh, yeah. I love this.
Who sold his recipe for like $500.
$500.
And the guy who bought it turned it into a massive fortune.
By adding one secret ingredient.
And they don't even tell you what the ingredient is.
No, they leave it up to your imagination. Right. But the point is that what he really bought for that $500 was an idea.
An idea.
And the economic impact of that idea was huge.
It's a great example of the potential that's hidden within ideas.
Absolutely.
And then we had the story of Dr. Frank Gonzalez, who had this $1 million idea for a new college.
And he was so sure of this idea, he had complete faith that he would find the money somehow.
Wow.
And it's amazing because he did.
He did.
His belief was so strong, it actually attracted the resources he needed.
It's like his vision became a reality.
Exactly.
Because he refused to let go of it.
And the book also talks about the opportunities that exist in new and emerging fields.
Oh, yeah.
Like radio was back then.
Right.
Where people with imagination and foresight can create amazing things.
So what are those new fields today for our listener?
Yeah, what are you passionate about? Where could your imagination lead you?
And while having these strong desires and plans is crucial,
yes,
the book stresses that almost no one achieves great power alone.
Right.
And that's where the principle of the mastermind comes in.
The mastermind.
Which they define as the coordination of knowledge and effort between two or more people.
Working together.
Yeah, working together in harmony.
Towards a common purpose.
Right. So it's about surrounding yourself with people who have skills and perspectives that complement your own.
Absolutely.
And working together towards those shared objectives.
Like it's a synergy.
Yeah, and they even talk about this psychic aspect to it. This third invisible, intangible force.
That's created when minds come together in harmony.
That's interesting. It makes you think about the dynamics of your own collaborations.
It does.
Doesn't it? And they even use Henry Ford again as an example, talking about his success and how it wasn't just his own drive and ingenuity, but also his connections with people like Thomas Edison, Firestone, Burroughs, and Burbank.
Those were some powerful minds working together.
Yeah, and on a larger scale, they point to Gandhi's ability to unite millions of people.
Through a shared purpose and this spirit of harmony.
Right, so it shows the potential for collective action.
Yeah, when people are united by a common goal.
Now, this next principle is one that often sparks a lot of curiosity.
Okay.
The mystery of sex transmutation.
Oh, yes.
Now, they talk about sexual energy as this incredibly potent stimulant for the mind.
In fact, they place it at the very top of the list of stimuli.
Wow.
But the point isn't about just indulging in this energy.
Right.
It's about redirecting it, channeling it towards other goals.
And they call this process sex transmutation.
Yeah, taking that powerful energy and using it to fuel your creative endeavors.
So instead of just expressing it physically,
Transforming it.
You're transforming it into ambition for fame.
Right.
Pursuit of power, a desire for financial success.
Whatever your goals are.
And they even suggest that this can elevate your thought vibrations.
Interesting.
And give you access to unconventional knowledge.
Like tapping into a higher level of thinking.
And they even make the observation that people with strong sexual drives are often really effective salespeople.
Because they have this personal magnetism that attracts people to them.
And they also talk about how a lot of great leaders throughout history were inspired by women.
Yeah, whether it was their wives or muses or other important figures in their lives.
But they do caution against going overboard with this energy.
Right.
They say that it can deplete you if you're not careful. And they talk about how around the ages of 30 to 40, there's often a natural harmonization of love and sex, which leads to more calmness, poise, and better judgment.
Interesting.
And they also talk about the enduring power of love. Even past memories of love to continue to inspire and motivate.
Yeah, that deep connection between love and creative output is a powerful thing.
And they even suggest that a man's desire to please women has been a driving force behind a lot of wealth and power accumulation.
It's an interesting perspective on motivation.
Now, all these desires and energies need a way to work their magic.
Okay.
And that's where the subconscious mind comes in.
The subconscious.
They describe it as the connecting link.
It's like the control center.
Yeah, and it's this receiver for all our thoughts.
Good and bad.
Good, bad, neutral.
It doesn't discriminate.
But it's especially responsive to those desires that are dominant and emotionalized.
The ones we feel most strongly about.
Especially the ones backed by faith.
So think about it. What are you feeding your subconscious? What are the dominant thoughts and emotions that you're focusing on?
So we really have to be mindful of what we're putting into our subconscious.
Because it will try to manifest it.
Yeah, whether we consciously want it to or not.
It's a powerful force.
And they even suggest that it's the link between our finite minds and this infinite intelligence.
Like a bridge to something greater.
Yeah, and that it's even the intermediary for prayer.
Wow.
So it's important to keep feeding it positive thoughts.
And shut out those negative ones.
Because the ones that are charged with emotion have the most impact.
Absolutely.
And they even give a list of the 7 major positive to be aware of.
Yeah.
And they use this example of humanity harnessing lightning through faith.
To illustrate the power of the subconscious.
To connect with these universal forces.
Yeah, and they also mentioned Dr. Ryan's research on telepathy at Duke University as potential scientific support for this idea of interconnected minds.
It's pretty fascinating to think about.
Yeah, it suggests that our minds might be capable of things we don't even fully understand yet.
Now, building upon this idea of a connection to something greater, they introduce the concept of the sixth sense.
The sixth sense.
But they don't mean it in the way that we usually think of it.
Right, not like some spooky premonition or anything.
They describe it as creative imagination.
Yes.
The doorway to infinite intelligence.
So this is about going beyond just rational thought.
Right.
Tapping into something deeper.
And they say that most people kind of use it accidentally or unconsciously.
But that true geniuses have learned to cultivate it and use it deliberately.
To connect with that universal mind.
Yeah.
And the author shares his personal practice of the invisible counselors.
Tell me about that.
So he would have these nightly imagined meetings with great figures from history.
Like who?
Like Edison, Lincoln, Napoleon.
Wow.
To learn from them and get their advice.
That's an interesting technique.
And he stresses that it wasn't just random daydreaming.
Right.
It was a very purposeful and focused mental exercise.
To tap into that creative imagination.
Yeah, and they conclude that understanding the sixth sense comes through inner mind development. And that it's essential for those who want more than just material wealth.
Yeah, it leads to self-understanding and true happiness.
Now, to make all this growth and achievement possible, they talk about the importance of overcoming fear.
Oh, yeah.
The 6 ghosts of fear.
Those insidious mental barriers.
And the first one they identify is indecision.
Indecision.
Which they call the ceiling of fear.
That can grow into doubt.
And I wonder how often we let indecision hold us back.
All the time, I think.
Right. And then they go on to list the 6 basic fears.
Okay, what are they?
Fear of poverty, fear of criticism,
okay,
fear of ill health, fear of loss of love, fear of old age, and fear of death.
The big ones.
And they emphasize that our thoughts, both positive and negative, have a tendency to manifest themselves in our lives.
Yeah, what we focus on expands.
And that we can even pick up negative thoughts from the environment.
Oh, wow.
Like from the ether.
So it's like we have to be careful about who we surround ourselves with.
And what we're exposing ourselves to.
Exactly.
And they use the example of the Wall Street crash and the Great Depression to illustrate this point.
That mass fear of poverty actually contributed to the economic downturn.
Yeah, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It is.
And then they detail the negative effects that each of these fears can have on our mental faculties.
Okay.
Our ability to reason.
Yeah.
Imagine. Be self-reliant.
Yeah.
For example, they say that fear of poverty can paralyze our thinking.
Right.
And fear of criticism can stifle creativity and lead to conformity.
Just like we're afraid to stand out.
Yeah, and they also talk about how some fears, like the fear of old age and the fear of death, can be rooted in societal beliefs and misinformation.
Yeah, we're taught to be afraid of these things.
But the good news is they offer advice on how to overcome these fears.
Okay, how do we do that?
Through decisive action and taking control of our state of mind.
So we have the power to choose.
Yeah, and then they introduce this concept of the devil's workshop.
The devil's workshop, what's that?
It's like this breeding ground for failure that often operates below our conscious awareness.
So it's like sneaky.
Yeah, it includes things like self-pity, envy of others' successes, focusing on past failures.
Yeah, dwelling on the negative.
And they stress the need for honest self-analysis.
To identify these tendencies.
To root them out.
And replace them with more positive influences.
Yeah, so it's about being mindful of our mental environment.
Both internally and externally.
And they conclude this section by highlighting Henry Ford's determination in the face of criticism.
As an example of overcoming fear and doubt.
And they give us a list of common alibis.
Oh, yeah.
That we use to rationalize inaction.
Those excuses we tell ourselves.
So recognizing those alibis is a crucial first step.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
Let's recap some of the key principles we've discussed. Yeah. We talked about the power of definite desire.
Yes.
The importance of persistence.
Right.
The role of faith and autosuggestion. The need for organized knowledge and action plans.
Yes.
The boundless potential of imagination.
Right.
The power of the mastermind.
The mastermind.
The principle of sex transmutation.
Yeah.
The influence of the subconscious mind.
Subconscious.
The intuitive guidance of the sixth sense.
And of course, the importance of overcoming those 6 ghosts of fear.
So for our listeners out there, we encourage you to go back to your copy of Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
With all these principles in mind.
Fresh in your mind.
And really think about which ones resonate most with you.
Absolutely.
And how you can apply them to your own goals.
Yeah.
And as a final thought to ponder, given the power of the subconscious mind, what kind of mental seeds are you planting right now?
What thoughts and emotions are taking root in your mind?
That's a great question to consider.
It is.
And thank you all for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We encourage you to share your own insights and experiences and any questions that you might have.
Absolutely.
Because we are all learning and evolving together.